Hélène Fillières, we just saw your beautiful first long feature, Histoire d'amour. In English, it's called Tide. It's your first long feature. You're mostly known and you worked as an actress in a dozen films or more even. How was it for the first time to change sides from one side of the camera to the other?
Well, definitely I was needing something to complete my work. I felt that being an actress is great, but I felt frustrated as in a creative part. And well, I've thought of making a film about 4 years ago, and then I looked for a subject, and I knew that I wanted to adapt a book and not write an original script. Mm-hmm. So I looked for the right story, and I found it with this book.
It is very much your own film by the fact only that you are the only scenario writer, if the credits are accurate in this respect, and you wrote the dialogues, it says specifically in the credits, and you directed as well. Why did you go for this particular story? Was that the one you were looking for?
Yeah, well, the news item that happened about in 2005 had an effect on me when I heard about it. But then 5 years later, when I saw that this French writer had decided to make a book out of it, I felt some sort of a link between the author of this book and me. The fact that both of us had been struck by this news item, and yeah, I felt that something of both our similar personal dark sides was exposed in this story, and it felt like an evidence for me that this story had something personal, a secretive part of my dark sides that I felt I should make a film about.
The news item you're talking about was a trial in 2005 where a fantastically rich banker, like the one in the movie, but in reality called Mr. Stern, was killed by his lover during a sadomasochistic ritual or session or whatever. What is it that appealed to you in this particular item of news, or the trial rather?
It's not really the trial, it's more that this image of this man found dead in a latex suit, killed by his mistress. I felt that so many elements of, as I said, our dark sides, our dysfunctions, the way, how can such a thing happen between two lovers, and how much it reveals about the human nature. All of this, and the sexual part of it also felt like very strong to me and very moving, and I wanted to pay a tribute to these two people and also reveal something of my personal intimate dysfunctions and probably everybody's dysfunctions. I felt that this story was like a metaphor for what do we do when we're in love, what is exactly a sex intercourse, what do we do to trigger desire in somebody else, and I felt the story was a real sort of metaphor for all kinds of love stories, the complexity of love stories.
We'll come to that, but before that, when Régis Jouffret wrote his novel Sévère, based on this particular Stern affair, he was worried, of course, or his publishers rather were, that the real people, the Stern family and his lover, who are the sorts of people who can easily afford to hire a lawyer to put you on trial, that they would come in and they would object to the book, for which reason he sort of abstracted the whole thing. He made it more abstract, and he did away with all sorts of concrete circumstances pointing to. When one compares your scenario, or your film rather, and this novel, one gets the impression that you have again sort of made another abstract step. You made certain things that are specific in the book. For example, that the lady calls herself a demi-mondaine, which is sort of not really a prostitute, but vaguely paid love. Anyway, you did away with that. You made her, in a way, more plain and more abstract and more mysterious, perhaps. Why did you do that? Why did you
Well, for one reason, of course, it's to respect the real people to whom this tragedy happened. I mean, definitely, but he already did it by not naming them and everything. But I felt that the most interesting thing was to maintain unresolved all this mystery, unresolved the fact, is she a whore, is she not a whore? More try to speak about what is a woman in certain way, like the idea of why should a woman, when she's sitting on a sofa, if she's beautiful and if she's waiting for a man, why should she be a whore? Does it mean she's a whore, or is it just because she's an object of desire? Our mind always focalizes on the fact that she would be a whore. I like the non-explanation of it, and so that people could question themselves, and I want people to think, is she or is she not a whore, so that they are thrown into the dilemma between the two of them. And the idea of not sticking to realistic details was also because I think cinema should transpose reality and not be too realistic, and I wanted the story to become more a myth than a true story that everybody could recognize and have explanations. I don't think cinema is meant to explain anything. I think cinema is meant to draw questions and disturb. So the more disturbing, so the less clue I would give, was the better for me.
And what you said before about wanting to show the dysfunctional elements in this particular love story, or in any love story, you seem to suggest that the film is not so much about sadomasochism, but it is about any sort of love or sexual relationship. Is that the right impression?
Yeah, well, I think that love is a complex thing, so we don't really know how do we love, why do we love, what can we do, to what extent we can go when we're in love with someone, and so to show all this complexity and precisely what is a sexual intercourse. So, it's not only the classic way of having sex, there are several ways of having sex, and this particular divine way of having sex for me is a great metaphor of how violent sex can be and how mysterious what you expect in a sex intercourse. Is it pleasure? Is it giving yourself to the other? How do you drive sexual pleasure in generally speaking? And yeah, it's more general than specific.
But what, for a filmmaker then, is the attraction of picturing a especially sadomasochistic relationship? Because it makes a better picture, it turns things more clear than they would be in a conventional sort of...
because I definitely think that in these relationships, the people to whom it happens are people who have wounds, definitely, who are wounded people. So it's for me, they're figures that are very touching, very psychologically vulnerable, and people who take their pleasure in suffering are definitely people who have a lot of suffering inside, and I wanted to show that, to express that, and to pay a tribute to all the people who are wounded inside, and it's not, and I felt that in this SN sexual relationship, there's a lot of what we all experience. By love, when you have a sexual intercourse, you find your own pleasure, but you want to give it to the other. So to what extent giving it to the other means a certain masochistic attitude? And I'm not trying to give any lessons about sadomasochistic sexuality, but I think that any kind of sexual intercourse has this dominant submitted relation all the time.
The film does have a sort of, you say you don't want to give lessons, but in a way it's a moralistic film, in a way. It's a moral story, like 18th century pornography very often is a sort of moralist story. You want to show something.
Well, I don't think it's a moral story. I think they're unconventional in the way they take their pleasure. He's unconventional, so what I want to provoke in the people who watch it is that where would you stand in front of such a unmoralistic sexuality? Do you judge it? Do you feel compelled to them, or is it too disturbing? I don't think it's moralistic. I think it's kind of disturbing. Mostly.
Is there a victor and a victim? Who wins and who loses in this game they are playing?
I think he wins.
Three of them, in fact.
Yeah, well, I think the man, the banker, wins because he has this sexual drive to that he's appealed by death, so he gets what he wants until the end, and at the end I finish the film with this word that he says encore, which means again, more, or go on. So he gets what he wants, and she's taken into this thing, but I'm not sure she wins so much because she loses everything. She loses his love, she loses him, and she's left, and she goes to prison. So I think he's the winner, but yeah. But I wouldn't say she's the victim. I'd say she made him win the game.
From a systematic point of view, what is absolutely mind-blowing in the film, I think, is the fact that you succeed in telling a very clear story while actually giving the absolute minimum of details on people's background. The husband, for example, we know he's a strong character. He's also played very well. But we know next to nothing about him, whether he knows the banker, whether he has some sort of financial deal with the banker, what exactly this woman is in his personal life, what their relationship is. Was it difficult in a way to get your scenario to this level of scarcity of material?
Well, it was a purpose. My purpose was to give the less details possible, so that I think that a cinema is here to once an image speaks by itself, and I think the respect and the great admiration I have for cinema is that by just filming something, there are a lot of meaning coming out of an image. So I thought putting an old man in with a young woman, without saying, you're my wife and I'm your husband, but saying in a different way, I'm not your father, is a better, for me, way to go inside the relation instead of outside, and showing the outside. And writing the script, the book already doesn't give a lot of details, but it's true that I cleared everything that I felt was too much. And the hardest part was probably for the actors to know exactly who they were, what were their names, if I may say so. And I kept helping them, saying, well, just you're with her, it means something, definitely. And you're 70 years old, she's 35, she's beautiful, you're old, it means something. Try to just feel it, and I guess we'll see it, because I'm here to film it. And I think since I wanted to never resolve this mystery and keep it unresolved, I had to give less details possible. I don't think cinema is meant to answer our questions. I think cinema, documentaries, or I don't know, explanatory books, but fiction is not here to give answers. Is to draw, to disturb, and to especially cinema is here to show a feeling without explaining it, I think. So for me, there's a lot of information, but probably some people will feel a lack, because some people need to know where do they come from, what is their travel, and where will they end. But I think you never know where you come from. When you walk in the street and you see a man with a woman without any information, you sense something. There's a relationship, so you can imagine what goes on between the two people, and I felt doing the same thing.
Shall we see whether anybody in the audience wants to ask a question, because we forgot to mention that, but feel free to.
Feel free to ask questions. Okay.
What is the meaning of the man in the airplane? after
good.
that. There's another man then.
There is, yes. Well, actually, the story. So the question was, what's the meaning of the man in the airplane? The story, the narrative takes place of. It's the story of a travel this woman makes back from Australia to her last point, which is the police. And during this travel, there's a man next to her, and what I like about this young man is that he's also a witness to this story. He in his way he took place in the story. There's the husband, there's the banker, and there's another man who's a sort of witness. And with the banker figure and the husband figure, for me it was two interesting figures representing men. For me, the mystery of men, the enigma of how they work, how they take their pleasure and everything. The old man, the younger one, the passive one, and the sort of crazy one would be the banker. But there's also another way of being a man, is to be a young man next to a woman. What does this woman leave to him? What is left in this guy after she's gone? And I like the idea of this last little moment of tenderness between this woman and another man. And it's another kind of relationship. No sex, no craziness, no neurosis, just a relationship. I felt it was a way to open a little bit the world, the men's world. That's it.
And this figure, actually, the man in the airplane, you wrote that very differently from
the book.
The guy in the book. There it's a fat guy that sort of nauseates her and was irritating in his trying to interview her. So you wanted to get a sympathetic figure sort of...
Yeah, well, actually, being myself a woman, I definitely wanted to try to question the man figure with my film. So the man's sexual pleasure with the banker, the man's sexual passivity with the husband. But the man in the plane, he's more like a witness to her. It's how he sees a woman. It's the other way around. He witnesses something out of her. He sees that she's like a rock, that she doesn't give any information, that she's a closed door. And I felt it was a pretty way to show that she had her own mysteries as well, and not only the male figures that she had came across in her life. And yeah, in the book he's not very interesting, but in my film I felt it was better this way.
You made him more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Very sympathetic, in fact.
Yeah, and it's also a male profile that, I mean, I would say the husband is the man she has, the banker is the man she wants to have, and the man in the plane is the man that she could have, but she doesn't want him because he's not as appealing to her as the other. He's too normal, actually, and the other one are disturbed, and that she's much more attracted by disturbed men than normal men.
Everybody else? It must have been a pretty difficult film to film. I mean, Benoît Poelvoorde is a great actor. Was it difficult for him to play these actual scenes? That must be sort of... Yeah, some people would find that embarrassing too.
Yeah, well, he was very brave to do the part, but I think the most difficult for him actually is the fact that I've used him in a total different way that he's usually used as an actor. He's used to play comic films because he's a very funny, hysterical guy in his real life, and the hardest part for him was to do the contrary to what he does usually. So to be serious, to be rigid, to be straight like that. And the sex scenes were probably hard for him, but it was so well organized between us that they knew exactly what I wanted, and he knew what I wanted to get. I wanted to hear him have an orgasm. I wanted him to really show something about male orgasm, and I think he felt that he had to do it. I don't know. It wasn't that hard, actually. It's more the whole part that was hard for him, not precisely the sex scenes.
Laetitia Casta, as well, is more sort of a light actress, as you are, if I'm not mistaken, but I haven't seen too many of your films. Did she like playing that, or how did you get them to do it in the first place?
Well, actually, Benoit, he came to me when he heard that I was going to make a film out of this book, because he had read the book and he knew about the story, and so we met. And actually, that was the major part of our work, was that he had felt compelled by the book as I had felt compelled. So it revealed something of his dark sides that we shared together. So it wasn't that difficult. But as for Laetitia, I really wanted her because I felt that she has a very dark and there's something inside of her that nobody sees, but it's definitely inside, since she's so beautiful. The fact that such a beautiful and light kind of actress would be attracted to such a sick kind of guy for me, it was obvious that it shown that she was also she had dysfunctions inside of her that he reveals. They had both to be the revealer of each other's dysfunctions. So if she's attracted by him, it means that she is deeply inside very destructive as well. And it's they're like magnets together. And she said yes right away when I gave her the script. So.
Sadomasochism as a subject in books and films seems to be very fashionable these days, right? There are hundreds of millions of people who have read 50 Shades of Grey. How does your film fit into this particular fashion? Was it meant to fit?
No, it wasn't, because I did the film before the book came out, but I think it's just, we are totally opposite, the book and 50 Shades of Grey and my film, because I have this, I try to expose the dark side of sadomasochistic sexuality, the drive for death, and which in 50 Shades of Grey is more like a game. It's a sexual game. So I don't know. I don't know if it's fashionable. I just think we all have drives inside of us that are disturbing. So.
You didn't mean to you didn't know that it would become fashionable by the time your film
No, and I wish my film was as fashionable as the book, but unfortunately, it's not the case.
Okay. The film starts off with a beautiful quotation, which is actually a literal quotation from the book, which says that
love stories are secret planets. They vanish into the air when their inhabitants have left them. They obey laws unfathomable to the rest of the universe, and even unfathomable to those who have dwelt there.
Wow.
We will be judged by laws that weren't ours by the time of the facts or the events.
The quote, which is a fantastic quote, I think, very much suggests that in the end, you cannot communicate to a third person the love affair that you are having with someone else, whatever this affair might be. Is that a fair conclusion from
It is, definitely. I think love affairs are definitely secret planets and private planets, and that once they're over, we've all experienced end of love affairs, and when it's over, it's really over. It disappears, it vanishes, and there's probably photographies or something that is left, but it disappears, and it's a love affair exists only when it's being lived by the two people, and they're the only one who know exactly why they're linked to one another, it's the mystery. You never really know, and so you can't explain to a third person why you love somebody and what drives you to him, and especially if the relationship is so complex. It's very personal, and I think it's a good thing. So I wanted also to pay a tribute to love through this film, saying that love is a complex matter, but it's great. The more complex, the better, I think. Okay,
which makes it even more admirable what lucid and beautiful film you made
Thank
about
you.
it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.